Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Protein is now at Starbucks, and it's never tasted so good. You can add protein cold foam to your favorite drink or try one of our new protein lattes or matcha. Try it today at Starbucks.
Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. This is episode 385, coming directly into your ears. Now, I recently celebrated, which is a little bit of an overstatement, a milestone, which is also hyperbole, of putting out a YouTube book review video every week, with a few caveats, for the last year. Now, what this really means is that I've been thinking about some of the things I've learned, some things that you've asked me, and just some of the general observations about thinking about fly fishing books in a very direct way for the better part of 14 months. Now, what I'm going to do today is kind of talk about 5 different things that are on my mind that relate to fly fishing books and may very well be interesting or helpful to you as you are getting out on the water this season, but also getting into books. But the first preliminary issues that I wanted to put out there, first is go ahead and subscribe. Head over to Casting Across on YouTube and hit that subscribe and like button, as the cool kids say. That way you get access to those videos as they come rolling out. You'll probably also see that you get this podcast on YouTube, but continue to listen to it over at your favorite podcast catcher if that makes you happy. The second thing is, I would strongly encourage you to listen to my interview with Rob Snowhite on his Fly Fishing Consultant podcast. That was published at the end of 2025, at the end of December of 2025. And this is like an abbreviation of some of the things that we talked about at length, but also an elaboration on some of the things that we briefly glanced off of, because he was asking me a lot of these questions, and these are questions that people have asked him, questions that people asked me, and observations that he allowed me to give voice to. So that is, over an hour, which this is going to be like 15 minutes. So just something else that I would encourage you to do. But here are the 5 things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to you reading fly fishing books whenever you're listening to this. It's being recorded in March, which is the beginning of season here up in New England. But if you're listening to this late in the season or in the heart of off season, then these will be applicable and appropriate as well. So the first thing that I wanted to encourage you with, if you haven't had a fly fishing book on your nightstand recently, or it's been sitting on the passenger seat of your car recently, but you are consuming a lot of fly fishing media, I would just encourage you in a very friendly way, not a rebuke by any stretch of the imagination, to ingest fly fishing content in the deliberate, measured, and conscientious manner that goes into the production of fly fishing books, and I would even say magazines, as well as its consumption. This is very different than the way that most fly fishing social media is both produced and consumed. What do I mean by that? I am a firm believer that a lot of what we see on social media scratches something in our brain that makes us want to go out and do something quickly. It could be make a purchase. It could be, engage in an activity. There's a certain compulsivity about it, or even an impulsivity about it that I would say can be helpful, but oftentimes is not. Whereas when you sit down and you read chapter to chapter of a book, both the time, energy, and effort that went into the authoring of that, the editing of that, the publishing of that, it really lends itself to a more measured, thoughtful kind of batch of content, and then your consumption of it requires you to be more deliberate and contemplative as well. So all of that to say, You read a good fly fishing book, you're still going to have that desire to book that trip and get out there. But it's going to be after having thought it through in a little bit more, maybe organized manner, rather than just scrolling through and seeing like, man, there's somebody fishing Pyramid Lake, there's somebody fishing Patagonia, there's somebody fishing in the TVL tailwaters. I need to go book a trip and do that, or I need to get out and do something, or I need to go buy a new fly rod. Like, honestly, that's kind of one of the things that happens is you have this displaced passion if you are keying in on the way that social media is engineered to kind of get your brain working. And you may misplace that desire to get out and go fishing with the desire to make a purchase. So I'm not saying this because we are mindless consumers, but I do think there is a more mindful way to go about consuming content, and books definitely facilitate that. So I think it's a both and. It's not an either or. I do think there's wisdom in getting into more long form work that's had somebody else's eyeballs on it rather than somebody just throwing up a 3-minute, really hastily compiled clip onto Instagram. So that's the first thought. Books are often measured in the way that they compel us to do things, and they are not designed or engineered to do that in a really rash and quick manner. All right, the second thing that I've been thinking about is how beneficial it can be to go off the beaten path in the books that we read. So the thing that is really interesting to me is how much I've enjoyed some self-published books. Now, this might be like a not a surprise to you, but for me, in the number of self-published books I get sent, and also books that come from small publishers, there's some that are not particularly great. I can tell that the people that wrote them put a lot of work and effort and energy into them, but those are actually the minority of those self-published books. But there's also books that are super obscure that are almost niche in who they would appeal to. They're very local in their focus, and I've really enjoyed those as well, even if it's not somewhere where I presently fish or have fished in the past or even plan to fish, just because the person who puts the effort into it, pours their heart into it, it's just really quite compelling. And if the writing is good, then that goes a long way. So I would say go off the beaten path. And here's a few ways you can do it. One, Google it. Books on fly fishing this area. Books on fly fishing Tennessee. Books on fly fishing Ohio. All right, whatever. Just look at it that way. Secondly, go to your local library. I have found books in the library that I've turned around and said, after reading a few chapters of this, I want to buy it. I'm happy to read this copy of it, but I want a copy of my own, and I want to see if I can find that and throw that on my bookshelf and in my collection. Going to your local library is a great way to discover these things. Another great place is Facebook Marketplace. The number of batches of old books that I come across, I mean, it knows me well. I think I talked about this recently. Like, it shows me old fly rods and it shows me old books. And it's a great thing to see, a lot of 3 books for $10. Come pick it up. All right, I'll do it. And if I want to give 2 of them away, it's all fine and good. But $10 for one good used book, I'm okay with that. So that would be the encouragement, is to go off the beaten path and try to find some things that just you might not have otherwise wanted to read, but it's come into your possession, and read it. That's when I had more space and more of a bookshelf. I would always go to a bookstore and buy 2 books I was interested in, and one I wasn't. And that one I wasn't, I would just start flipping through it, and sometimes I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I would say that's the same thing if there's a book that's popular that just doesn't strike you as interesting. Give it a shot if you are a reader, and whatever is making everybody else excited may make you excited as well. Third thing, do you struggle to read? Have you struggled to listen to me talk about reading for the last 8 minutes and 15 seconds? All right, that's all fine and good. But one of the encouragements I give to people, I do this for ministry as well, for books that are much more important than fly fishing books, one in particular, is to just set it aside to be a part of your day and break it up into chunks. For some of the reading that I do for work, I like to space out my reading in a controlled way. That way, if I'm feeling great, I can just keep going. But if not, then I'll read those 3 pages it's given me. So you take a book that's 900 pages, like, holy cow, 900-page book. That just sounds terrible. Well, you break it up over the course of a year, and that's 3 pages a day. And there's some days where 3 pages might be hard to get through, but there's other days where you're just like, you go 15, 20 strong, and even though it's a heavy book that requires a lot of thinking, that's not a problem. Well, over the course of 8 months, 10 months, a year, you can get through a big book. With some of these fly fishing books that are, 150 pages, 200 pages, you block off, 5 pages a day, you're going to get through it in a month. And that's just my encouragement. If you're like, I want to be a reader, I'm not a reader, I want to be a reader. All right, do that. Get yourself book darts, throw them in every 5 pages, and just pull them out one at a time as you go through that book. And what this does is it starts to build good habits. And I would say I fall asleep so much better at night if I am reading a book rather than scrolling on my phone. I fall asleep quicker, not because I'm bored, but I just think that it's a less stimulating. I know it's a less stimulating thing to be doing when you should be gearing up to rest. The same thing, lunch break. You can scroll around on social media and get upset and angry at the world, or you could read for 25 minutes or half an hour or 45 minutes, however long your lunch break is. I would say also, if you can do it and you're like a treadmill or a stationary bike or elliptical person, then I cannot for the life of me read from a paper book when I'm doing that. But if I have it on a tablet and I can blow that font up, I can scroll through it and do it that way, then that's good. And the fourth thing, so the first thing was books are measured in how they compel us to do things. Secondly, go off the beaten path as you are looking for titles. Thirdly, struggling with reading, then break it up into smaller pieces. The fourth thing I would say, and this is awesome for fly fishing, because if you are doing a lot of fly fishing, then this will actually meet your need. Mix it up in how you consume it. So the first thing I'd say is do an audiobook. Most major audiobook formats and platforms will give you John Gierach, right? And so add that to your rotation. Podcasts are fine and good. Music is fantastic. Let's go back to that point. Podcasts are very good. Listen to this one, subscribe, right? But put a fly fishing book in your rotation. And I do the same thing where I always have an audiobook that's there. There's other things that maybe take precedent, news stuff I want to listen to, ministry stuff I want to listen to, stuff that people have sent me that I listen to. But I always have an audiobook that's waiting for me, that especially if I'm going on a longer drive, throw an hour of a book on there, and you can just really enjoy that, particularly if the person reading it is really good. So add in audiobooks, add in magazines. Right now, the only magazines I'm reading with any regularity are Dark Skies Fly Fishing, which I talked about last week. I talked about that last week. And Trout from Trout Unlimited. Doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the other ones that are out there. It's just those are the only two that are showing up on my doorstep. So reading those and getting a flavor for people who are adept at utilizing an economy of words is different than reading a bunch of 150, 200, 300 page books. So that's a good thing too. And then genre also. If you're all about fiction, throw in some history. If you're all about history, read a guidebook. Man, that's one of the ones I love doing that. I love reading guidebooks. I know a guy who likes reading dictionaries, and he said, that sounds terrible. Well, if you break it up into small pieces, just read a couple pages a day, you actually learn some pretty interesting things. I think the same thing is true of a guidebook. Like, I don't plan on fishing Idaho anytime soon, but it's kind of fun to read about the opportunities that are out there for those folks. And then lastly, use fly fishing books to fill in the gaps, okay? Now, you can consider yourself a fly fisher if you go fishing twice a year. I'm totally fine with that. There's some people that are going to get all up in arms and get in a twist over that. If you fly fish twice a year, but you think about it a lot, then you're a fly fisher, right? Now, if you fly fish 330 days a year and you're on the water and maybe it's your vocation, you're also a fly fisher. But you know what? You're just different kinds of fly fishers. If you are more of the 2 to 15 to 30, day a year guy, then books are a great way to stay engaged. And I think it's not only good, I think it is just completely legitimate and in line with the way that fly fishers have been categorized for not just generations, but for centuries. If you are reading a handful of fly fishing books a year, and maybe the number of fly fishing books that you read is greater than the number of fish you caught, then you're still a fly fisher and you're involved in fly fishing stuff and in the fly fishing community and the fly fishing culture. But if you're somewhere in between, where you're fishing a lot and you wish you'd be fishing more, Well, a book is a great way to fill in those gaps. It's a great way to kind of stay plugged in. For the new angler, it's a great way to expand your knowledge of the sport. For somebody who's been doing it for a long time, it's a great way to think about it in new ways. And for the person who's not getting out as much as they would like to, it's a great way to just stay plugged in. So use fly fishing reading, use fly fishing books to fill in the gaps. So those are the 5 thoughts that I've had over the last few weeks as I've been thinking about where I am with these book review videos. I guess the other encouragement would be if there's a book that you think I should talk about or read, let me know. A number of the books in the stack in front of me have either been sent to me by listeners and viewers. I'm not saying this because I am soliciting, please send me books, but if you want to, shoot me a email, matthew@castingacross.com, and I'm happily giving you my address if you do so. But even if you just want to send me a link, or if you are publishing a book and you want me to be a part of that, it's awesome to be on the list of press releases that I am to get some of these books, just because it exposes me to things I would never have otherwise seen. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, if you have thoughts on a book I've talked about, you just want to share those, then let me know. A great opportunity for me to interact with those is coming up as I do a fly fishing accusation podcast here in a couple of weeks. And once again, that's matthew@castingacross.com. But I enjoy reading, and a lot of you do as well. And so it's kind of fun to do that together. So I appreciate it. I appreciate all of the listening, of course, all of the watching, and I'm just looking forward to just the next year of book reviews. This week on Casting Across, Monday's article is called Crying Bomb. Crying Bomb. All right, what does that mean? Well, this is an article in which I interact with the passing of the scientist and the theoretician Paul Ralph Ehrlich, and he passed away earlier in March of 2026. And he wrote The Population Bomb. And this book theorized that the world was going to plummet into famine and distress because of overpopulation, and it did not happen. So I interact with his ideas at a very, very high view level, and certainly not criticizing him as a person, but precisely because I think he has dignity and value as a person, I have to criticize those ideas, and how there's a great cross connection with cold water conservation and fly fishers and their ecological impulse for stewardship. So that was Monday's article, Crying Bomb. Wednesday was a book review called A Fly Fishing Book You Probably Don't Need. Why would you watch such a thing? Well, you probably have books on your shelf you don't need. This is an example of a book on my shelf that I probably don't need, but because I have it, I enjoy it. And the primary reason is it is outdated to the max. It is 30 years old as of the recording of that video, but the data is interesting from a historical and from a nostalgic perspective. And so I share what that book is over there on that video. This week's recommendation on the Casting Across Fly Fishing podcast is a little organizational tool by the good folks at Loon Outdoors. I talk about Loon quite a bit, and every time I'm getting fly tying, I'm just happy for the design and the ergonomics of some of their tools. Not all of them are perfect for me, but most of them are, which is saying a lot. I think that a lot of work goes into it. But the one I'm talking about today is an organizational tool. Now you could say, oh, I could just use this. Okay, well then just use that. It drives me nuts. And people always say, oh, that's just this. That tool is just this tool. Okay, fine, then use this tool. Don't get all up in arms about it. The bench rings, they come in a package of three, $8.50, 3 different diameters, and they are a coated wire with a little screw together attachment. And what they effectively do is they run through the little plastic eyelet on the top of your hook bags, your weight bag, your beadhead bags, your dubbing bags. And if you don't have a huge fly tying storage area, if you are maybe living out of tubs or tying out of some sort of other portable storage option, and you can't, there's not a place for everything in its place. These are a great way to keep all of one type of item together. I use them for hooks. I use them for, like I said, bead heads. And I sort them in a way that's logical to me. So I flip through them like a Rolodex. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's great fun. They're just a great handy little tool. And I've had them for a long time, and for a while, I think I just kind of let them sit there. But I've been using them for a few years, and I just think they're fantastic. Especially if you buy all of one kind of dubbing. And you can throw them on there and keep them together. You're not having to fish through things. You pick up the ring and they're all dangling there like a bunch of keys if you're a janitor. So I'll put a link to the bench rings on this podcast show notes over at castingacross.com. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 45% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.